Beneficent, the Merciful, welcome and thanks for joining us for this Friday evening program. Today's program will be a panel discussion about the importance of having a community foster facility to house the many children that are coming into the foster system. The goal is to educate on the dire need of building a facility to house the children that are entering the foster care from our community. Also, the lack of available licensed Muslim foster parents. Families in our community are losing their children because they are unaware of laws, and many have poor legal representation. Some facts to keep in mind: every 2 minutes in the US, a child enters the foster care. Over 400,000 children live in foster care. In Michigan alone, there are almost 138,000 total referrals for child abuse and neglect. Today, we are hoping to answer some of the questions surrounding this dilemma and to take a step toward a solution. We will start with a recitation of Surah Al-Duha by Sister Hala Alawi. Please help me welcome her to the podium.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you, Hala, for that beautiful recitation. Today we are honored to have with us Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell represents the 12th District of Michigan in the U.S. House of Representatives. Before being elected to Congress, Debbie was the chair of the Wayne State University Board of Governors. She introduced the Amir National Bill, H.R. 4990, Foster Care Improvement Act 2018, to U.S. Congress. She is an active civic and community leader and is a recognized national advocate for women and children. She believes strongly in maintaining a healthy foster care system and is a foster parent herself. Please help me welcome Congresswoman Debbie Dingell.
So good evening to everyone tonight, and what an honor it is to be here with the American Muslim Empowerment Resources for this really important event and discussion. I want to recognize Rehab and Ahmed Amir for their dedication, their passion, and for their work to ensure that all children in foster care, the foster care system, have a safe and secure home that they can heal and thrive in. By being here this evening, you recognize already the importance of the foster care system and steps that we've got to take to improve it. The first step to improving our foster care system is understanding the issue and exchanging ideas of making it work for children and families. We're all familiar with the heartbreak story of the Amir family. The horrors that they faced in losing a child, then having their other children taken from them. Can you imagine that happening to any family? Their subsequent difficulties in trying to bring their own children home exposed the deep crack in the current foster care system that tore this family apart, and what we're working now to fix at the federal level, which was ultimately fixed at the state level. The Amirs helped shine a light on this awful injustice, and they've been working tirelessly ever since to make foster care placement fairer and better for the child. You've made such great progress. Michigan came together to pass the Amir Bill in 2011, bringing accountability to the foster care system in our state. But it's not over, and by the way, there's still bias that we have to keep fighting and working for. And the foster care system is overworked and it's taxed. We need more foster parents. And you see a little child running around here. I don't know where he disappeared to, but he's smiling because he's being loved right now and that's who we're fighting for. I see him out in the back now. We're working in Washington to pass legislation, the Rehab and Ahmed Amir Foster Care Improvement Act, which she spoke about when she introduced me, to enhance the existing federal policy and prioritize placing children in the care of willing and able relatives or a family member of the same cultural background or religion as the child. That's one of the most important things. So we need more families in the Muslim community to help be foster parents. The top priority of any foster care placement must be the child. It must always be the child's well-being and safety. Study after study shows that trauma during childhood can have adverse effects throughout their life. But we can reduce the trauma by ensuring that all children in the foster care system are able to live in a home that's supportive and loving. And in many cases, that does not have to be strangers. It can be with family or relatives. There's some circumstances that are not possible, but we owe it to these children to do our best to place them with people that they know the best and that can love them. Rehab and Ahmed Amir are working every day to make that dream a reality, and we're here to work and fight alongside them. I'm proud to work with them to increase awareness about the need for more licensed Muslim foster parents. Having more licensed foster parents will help ensure that children are placed in a home that understands their cultural norms and can best support them during this difficult time. So I know if you're here, you care, so if you know someone that we can help connect them, let's do that. So thank you for doing this tonight to help children. That's really what this is about. It's helping children. They need us they're brought into this world and they just need somebody to love them. And if we love them and we help them early, we know those most formative years are 0 to 5. And then think of what it's like to be an older child, to just want somebody to love you, to give you a start in life, to care. The little one that I just met said he wants to stay with her forever. You know, they just want to be loved and held, and we just need to be there. So anyway, thank you for being here. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care, and we have to get more people to help take care of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Debbie. More than 30 years ago, the struggle started when the Amir family lost their parental rights and their 3 children, who were all younger than 3 years old, and were removed from their custody. Many years later, the Amers continued to fight for their children and formed a legislation titled the Rihab and Ahmad Amer Foster Care Improvement Act. This bill proposes that children who must undergo foster care should be placed with the family's relatives first, or be placed in a home with the same religion as the family of the child. The Amer Act was officially passed into Michigan law in December 2010, and efforts are being made, like Congresswoman Debbie said, to pass it on a national level. Rihab Amer is the founder and president of the American Muslim Empowerment and Resources Foundation. She is a nurse by profession and has been advocating for families and children, empowering them to fight for their rights. She is currently a foster parent herself and is in the process of developing a foster care facility to house the many disabled children from our community. Please help me welcome Sister Rihab to the podium.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. Thank you so much, Sister Maya, for an awesome representation. Really, all the praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful, the beneficent, the God is the best planner. Thank you so much for being part of the Amer mission. Thank you, Attorney Berlinda Good, for being the voice of justice, the voice that needs to be heard. Thank you for being there. I thank and I appreciate Brother Mike Senior. I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce your last name. I'm trying so hard. I really appreciate you. I'm honored that have come across our path. I've reached out to, been an advocate and had more orientation with Vista Maria through our mosque. And I tried to get many Muslim parents to be licensed. At that moment, I was told I could not be licensed because my rights were terminated. I wanted so hard to be able to save a child, not to endure of what my children endured and still. But with God's will and guidance, we got to meet again with a group of the community. We met at Vista Maria, and Mike told me, it doesn't matter if your rights were terminated, you could go through the process. And I surely went. And not only that, I found out we were on a central registry, which is I never knew. And then with God's will, that was taken out by the help of God and my caseworker, December Mitchell, who I love and adore. And thank you for helping me through all the steps and the support. I am here standing before God and each one of you, humbly thankful to God for putting Attorney Roger Fahrenheit in my way. Since then, I had so many cases came across my path, and I only took a phone call from him to call him, and he would come in and fight the battle, and then be able to get these children the best representation ever. At this stage right now, we are trying really to open the Amer foster care organization as because of the shortage of having Muslim foster parents. And I'm really trying so hard to get the community to get licensed. I got my license a few months ago. If I had not had that license, the child, the 6-year-old Angel that you saw running around here, he would be in a shelter. he would be in a shelter. I'm telling you, he wouldn't be laughing. To take a child, for the child to be removed from their parents, even no matter how loving or whatever situation the child is in, it's more traumatized and emotional when that child is removed and to be placed with their own non-fit familiar surrounding. The emotional trauma is so severe that a child innocent will be taken. I've stood all these years and I held up my pain, and I've spoken of the pains of my children and the cries of many who came across my path. I vowed, no child shall cry, no child voice shall not be heard. No child shall be made to fear that they're not worthy or they don't matter. These children do matter. These children have a right. These children have a voice. We are their voices, are obligated before God to be there for each one of them. As they are the future leader, let's help them be that leader that God created them to be. These children deserve the love, the guidance, the support. I really appreciate each one of you. And most of all, I thank my husband, who's my rock, the silent one. Thank you so much for jumping all the hoops with me. And thank you to my son, Hussein, who God had given me a gift from above, who has the personalities of his sisters and his brother. What God gave me, no man shall take from me. My children are mine, and I want to make sure your children are yours. God bless you, and thank you so much. Thank you, Maya. Thank you for all the Amr team. Thank you, Hassan, Zablani, for everything, for all of your support. God bless you. I really appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you, Haji, for that touching word. Our next speaker is Attorney Roger Farina. Attorney Roger obtained his bachelor from the City University of New York and his law degree from Boston University School of Law. Mr. Farina has 31 years of civil and criminal court trial experience in both federal and state courts, working as a Michigan Assistant State Prosecutor and the Massachusetts Attorney General. He also helped develop many investment projects in the Middle East, including countries such as Egypt, Qatar, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. He has championed numerous charitable organizations that have maximized his experience in child welfare law. He was legal representative to Boston Children's Services Human Rights Committee and served as attorney on the board of directors for the YMCA AIDS acupuncture clinics throughout Massachusetts. In 1993, he incorporated the Minority State Police Officers Association, including its student outreach program addressing economic and social issues for state police officers and minority students. He has worked with parentalrights.org in Virginia, where the focus is on protecting children by empowering parents. He is the legal advisor for the Amr Foundation, where he is instrumental in assisting to protect the rights of families. He is an advocate of the Amr legislative initiatives to effect nationwide changes in child welfare law. And on a personal note, Mr. Farina is a black belt, so be careful when you go into his office. He's a black belt in martial arts, taekwondo, jiu-jitsu, and a word that I cannot even pronounce. He also speaks Spanish fluently, has completed 3 Boston marathons, and the Detroit Free Press Marathon. Welcome to the podium, Mr. Farina.
It's an honor to speak to you tonight, and again, thank you for all coming out. I will start by giving an example of a case. I kept getting calls from probably around August, September, from Rahab saying, well, there's a family, we really need you to help. They have a lawyer, but it's kind of a very tough situation. Mother has severe issues, but she's really committed to working to protect her family, but she's not being heard. The judge is not listening to her, the Child Protective Services is not listening to her, and they're not listening to the children. They're not listening. The children were 7, 8, 11, and 12. And what had happened is the mother had been beaten for about 10 years by her husband, had a gun put to her head, suffered severe domestic violence. The children were being neglected because of the abuse the father had put in. The children would often step in and protect the mother, and the mother would step in and protect the children from the abuse. And the school filed, Protective Services removed the children. Mother never physically hurt the children. There was no substance abuse. They came over from the Middle East. But no one was listening to Mother. They put services upon services in place, and Mother complied. Yet they still tried to put the children up for adoption. It got stopped. The children were removed, were placed back with the mother all at the same time. And when you put 4 children who've been out of care, and it was about 2 years at this time, without any real services, and the social worker said to her, you know, if there's any problems, you can call me. So she got the kids in summer school, took the kids to and from schools, regular school programs, the kids all moved on to the next semester. She made sure they made the medical appointments. She completed her parenting skills. 2 of the children were fighting, the boys were fighting, they were very competitive, and they had stuff, one was favored by the father, one was not, so they always are going to be sort of against each other. And Mother stressed out. She picked up the phone and called the social worker and said, I'm having an anxiety. She couldn't talk English that well, but she said, please help me. Could you help me take the kids? She collapsed on the floor and was taken by an ambulance. The police came. The social worker came and removed the children from her. She didn't. The next day, they went to the hospital. Mom says, how are my kids doing? She said, well, they're going to be in foster care. And she went forward and filed a petition to remove the children and keep them away from the mother. She said, all I did was collapse, and I called you for help. They did not help her. They went to court, and the kids were with her for 7 weeks. She was doing excellent with the children. They had a family service workers working with her in the house. They documented what she was doing. None of those reports were presented to the judge at the time. So when I came in the case, Rahab sat there, and she sat right in the back of the courtroom, and I'm facing this way, and I know she's got my back because she's sitting right there, and the judge can see her. And then she said, you know what, we need to get the community back together around this mother. And she identified foster families for each of these kids. 2 of the kids were kept by Protective Services, and we couldn't get them to be moved. But 2 families, and then 4 families, then 6 families came through to say, look, we want the kids, we want the kids. Let us have the kids. We organized them to step up. They came in because of Rahab, because of the Amr Foundation, and their support of the Amr Foundation. They put in and came to court, and they testified. And what they did is they allowed the mother to come to the house and work with her children. And they were advocates. They watched her parenting skills. And when we did the trial, the termination trial, and they spoke up, you had Rahab here, sitting here for the Amr Foundation. You had the family foster care workers testifying on behalf of the mother and on behalf of the children. It broke the judge's heart because the combination of both showed the community cared and the community stepped up for these children, and the community is organized. And it's not one, two, it's deep. And a lot of families care. We were able to stop the termination trial against the mother. And now we're getting the kids back together, although some of the social workers are still fighting us. But because of your effort, because of your help, because of the concern and care that you decided to put forward through the Amr Foundation and identifying and focusing in the community, we stopped something that was tragic for these children. And I think when I first, and keeping in mind, foster care workers on the whole need guidance. When I started as a Child Protective Services attorney in 1995, I remember walking in, and we put lawyers into the offices of protective services so we can observe how they screen cases and we can give advice. It was a very good program that we did. And I remember sitting in the supervisor's office, and I thought it was a flower, a vase. And I said, "That's a very beautiful vase." And she said, "Well, it's not a vase, it's an urn." And I walked around, and I said, "What's an urn for?" It says a child that died, and this was at the time of the AIDS epidemic. And a lot of kids were dying, but they had no family, no relatives, no one to mourn them. And what these social workers did, and this is in Boston, but I think we've heard it in different cities, is they kept the urns in their office and they remembered the children. And it shows you there's heart. There's people that care. They need to have people stepping forward to bring that out and not make it a cold governmental agency that sort of tries to replace the parents, but show that how the parents are tied in with the community and they can get help and touch the hearts of these workers. So I'm saying Amr Foundation, what it's doing in Washington and what's doing here in Michigan is an absolute necessary resource. Everyone that's here, that's sitting here tonight, you have a part to play. We need you. The Child Protective Services need you. The families that are in crisis need you. And the police need you to offer guidance and offer homes and offer hope. And the best interests of the children is not be removed from their homes or not be removed from their community. And I ask you to continue your support, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roger. Our next speaker is Attorney Berlinda Good. Attorney Good is a mother, grandmother, and a great-grandmother. She worked as a registered nurse for over 40 years and has over 20 years of experience as a lawyer. She is the director currently of the Adoption and Foster Care Outreach Program at Fellowship Chapel. Please help me welcome her to the podium.
I want to say thank you. Thank you, Ahmed Rehab, for having me. After the last speaker, I mean, I don't think I can stand in his shoes here. I did do a marathon, but it was a half a marathon. However, I have to reflect back on how I met Rehab. I am the director of adoption and foster care at my church, Fellowship Chapel. My pastor is Reverend Wendell Anthony, who is also the president of the NAACP, and he's pretty vocal in the community. And one day he was preaching, and he's like, you know, if there's not a ministry started, okay, because we want everybody active, the same way Rehab is reaching out to her church home. She's saying we need everybody active. So I went up to my pastor and I said, you know, we don't have an adoption ministry here. He says, go see George on the URSHA board and tell him, and he'll work with you. I didn't know George on the URSHA board, but it turned out he worked with Spalding, and me and him have worked together for the last 2 years doing monthly forums. As a nurse, you know, 40 years, it took me a while. You can find a niche And if anybody know about nursing, you know there's a lot of different areas you can work in. I've worked ICU, I've worked home care, and the last part of my work has been in psych. But after 17 years, I got a little bored, so I went to law school. Once again, the practice of law has many areas. So I've did criminal, everybody say, you're a nurse, do medical malpractice and make money. Well, I don't have patience for people who complain about their foot hurt or they got an injury. After seeing people lose feet, lose their limbs, and have real pain, I don't have patience with folks who complain. So I couldn't do it. I couldn't do personal injury. I really gravitated toward criminal, and criminal clients gravitated to me. They love Be Good. That's my acronym, Be Good. Law Office of Be Good. So if you ever need me, just look me up like that. But it's nothing like an honest criminal who'll tell you, I ain't nothing but a drug dealer, get me the best you can get me. So I enjoyed it. But then one day I ended up down at juvenile hall doing cases down there, and I'm like, I knew delinquency because of criminal. But when I did neglect, I thought, oh my God, but it allowed me to use my medical background because we would have shaken baby syndrome. We would have this kind of case, and they would have medical records, and I was like, okay, what's this app card? What did this mom do? Then seeing babies born with 4 and 5 drugs in their system, and that's when the system steps in and take those babies. So getting back to meeting rehab, she came to one of our forum, her and her husband, and 2 other ladies were with them. And my speaker, the judge, I didn't know this, was the prosecuting attorney on her case with her children. They were very, very fierce in their approach to the judge. In fact, we had to have security walk her out of the building. I'm not saying they were disrespectful, but it was another woman there at the time, you know who I'm talking about. She wanted to make her point, and unfortunately, this same judge had been the prosecuting attorney on her case. So, and both children had been removed. And that's a very emotional issue when your children are removed. So I Googled rehab after meeting her. I Googled her story and I thought, oh my God, what the hell happened? This woman whose baby dies and she's charged with murder, and then to assume your baby's body and find out that it was a diagnosis that is extremely hard to diagnose. And this is what kills me as a nurse. I know things mimic issues. So a failure to thrive is not automatically a neglect case. A kid who dies after a fall is not automatically neglect. And then she's exonerated, and they still refuse to give her back her baby. I'm what they call a child's attorney. I'm that person who can keep you from getting your babies or help you to get your babies. There's no sweeter words that I like to hear than a return home. Because in my world, being a mother of 3 kids, 10 grandkids, and 3 great-grandbabies, I don't want to see my babies nowhere but in my house or in their parents' home. Unfortunately, I do have custody of 3 of my babies. And this is my story and why I'm here. I'm adamant about what's happening because my baby, actually 3 of them, were born positive with cocaine, heroin, and marijuana in their system. Why? How? How does this happen to our children? But standing in NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, when my grandbaby was born, and holding him in my hand, I knew that I was going to do everything I needed to do to make this right for him. And when those children, they were in Ohio, when he was discharged from the NICU, they immediately put them into the system. So my babies were put into placement and taken out of their parents' home. And rightfully so. I've called protective service on them because we need to protect our children. But because I'm in Michigan, and they're in Ohio, the fight was on. I think I called everybody who I could think of to help me get my grandbabies out of the system. And then I understood why the Lord put me where he put me. Because being and working neglect down at juvenile, I got my grandbabies out of the system. The baby who was born with the heroin, he was 6 weeks when I got him home. And the workers who came to my home in Michigan, they said to me, "You're the talk of the office." I'm like, "Why? We've never seen anybody get their children out of the system as quickly as you did." And I was like, that should not be unusual. Our children should not be wasting in a system when there's grandmothers who can step in as big mama, when there are aunts and uncles who can take those children in. Rehab participated in an interfaith panel with me. I had Muslim person, I had contacted the Hispanic community. Unfortunately, that speaker had an issue with one of her children and couldn't show up. I had a Jewish speaker, and what was so interesting is my Jewish attorney who spoke. He said, "Well, B, what do you want me to say?" I said, "Well, what would you say if it was one of your babies in the system?" He says, "Well, you know, down here we don't see Jewish children in Wayne County. We see black children, we see your children, and we see, of course, a few trickling of white children and a whole splattering of Spanish children." But you know what was interesting? That Jewish attorney told me, the first thing I would tell my children is never forget that you're Jewish. And there's no shame in the game. Never forget that your children are Arab. Never forget that they're of African ascent, and you don't have to apologize. That's why I support what you're doing in your community. That's why, in my world, it does take a village to raise our children, and we need to be about doing that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Berlinda. Our next speaker, Mike Skinichny. Did I get it right, Mike? Great. Mike Skinichny has been very fortunate to have spent over 20 years in the field of child welfare. As a former foster child himself, he knows all too well that oftentimes the voice of a child goes unheard. As an adopted child, he also knows the difference a permanent and loving home can make. Mike was raised to stand up for what he believes in and to dedicate himself to helping others. He worked to spread awareness within the Metro Detroit area on the need for fostering children and the huge shortage of loving and compassionate individuals willing to become foster parents. He considers it an honor to serve the children and family of Vista Maria as the Senior Manager of Foster Care and Adoption. Please welcome Mike to the podium.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I thank you for inviting me. I don't have any, great stories. The good thing about going last is I can just repeat what they said. I mean, everything that they said just rings true with me, and there's a common theme, and the common theme is fight. The work that we do at Vista Maria and the Almer Foundation and in the courtrooms across the state and across the country in foster care is a fight. Don't make any mistake about it. It is not an easy system to understand. It is not a logical system to understand. It makes no sense a lot of times, what we do. But when you get the outcome that you're looking for, then you realize why you do it. I've been doing it for a very long time. Every once in a while I leave and I go into business to make some money because we don't make any money, But I keep coming back because the second theme that I'm hearing here today, what we're talking about and we're trying to impart to you, is obligation. This morning I was preparing for this at home, and I was reading some holy words, and it talked about the obligation that we have to take up this fight. These are our children. The children that come into our system come in because their parents are no longer able to care for them. Doesn't mean they're bad. I haven't met a bad one yet. But a lot of times the system isn't able to see that because it's not designed to. It's not our place to hate the system. They're just doing their job too. And they have a very difficult job. I like my position because I fight on the good side, I say a lot. But they're not on the bad side. You know, they're just doing a job too. And they have to. Because sometimes we have to make uncomfortable decisions to remove a child from a parent. And we could talk about stories where we would all agree that sometimes you have to do it. But unfortunately, what happens is good people get caught up in that system, like what happened to the Amers. A horrible story. And you know what the saddest thing is that's not the only one that I've heard like that. And so what I try to do at Vista Maria is try to educate people to let them know that you can stop this from happening. You don't have to become a foster parent. We'd love you to, but you don't have to. But you can be active in your community to keep an eye on the mother who may be struggling. Because it takes a lot to lose your kids to the system. You do not want to live in a country where it's easy for the government to take a child. And luckily in this country, and in the state of Michigan in particular, we have very good laws that work for parents to keep the children with them. But it's not perfect. And it takes people like us and you to be the advocates for these, because like Ms. Amer said, or someone said, voice for the voiceless. Yeah, that's one of my mantras, right? These little kids can't speak, some of them literally. Others, they may be 16, 17, they can't speak. They can't go before a court and battle against a very talented attorney. I've been in court with Ms. Good. It's not good. She's tough. Mr. Farina, black belt in law too, I'll bet. I'm not going against you in court either, right? So you're going to put a 16-year-old who's scared in court against an experienced attorney and expect them to be able to say to a judge and to attorneys, I want to go home? People look at them and they go, you don't understand. You know, your mom has to do this, this, and this, and they start talking about the law and blah, blah. It gets really boring. So they need the fighters. They need the homes. One of the things that I'm very, very proud of, this is very hard for me, by the way. I don't like talking about myself. But one of the things that I'm very proud of is that when I came to Vista Maria 9 years ago, I was a worker, and I believe that the workers are the most important people. Now, unfortunately, I'm in management, and I don't get to do the work in the field. I don't get to do the foster homes, and I don't get to play with the kids anymore, you know. But I can make a difference on my own, and I do. But one of the things that I'm very proud of is that when I came to Vista Maria, I'm not really familiar with this part of town very much. I grew up on the east side. I lived in Detroit my whole life, but we just stayed in the city of Detroit pretty much. Anything the other side of Woodward was like up north, you know. We just never came over here, you know. And so when I came over, I learned the area very quickly. And then I asked the question at work, why do we not have more Muslim foster homes? Because in fact, at that time, we had 0. And it didn't make sense to me. And it was very interesting, and I could go on for this for a very long time, but I'll save this for another time. If you're interested, let me know. I think that there's a generational thing, and right now we're seeing more kids coming into care because of second and third generations where the community is not coming around them as much, okay? But anyway, so what I've done is to bridge the gap between the communities. And so now 10% of our foster parents are Muslim foster parents. Right now, Wayne County, when they remove a kid, if that kid has any sort of Muslim heritage, they call me. They call Vista Maria. And they say, what do you got? And I'm like, I got beds. I have a bed to keep this child in the community. Not only in the community, but maybe in the same neighborhood. Going to the same places that they're used to. Imagine. I do this, I'll end with this. I do this little thing sometimes when I teach classes, is I tell people to leave everything in the room that they have. So right now, if I asked you to leave everything in the room, and let's say you'd never been in this building, and then I take you in part of the building where it's really dark and you're not really sure where you're at, and I lead you down a couple hallways, and then I take you into a room where there's nothing but a chair and a bare wall, and then I close the door and I say, I'll be back. But I don't come back. I leave you in there for about 15, 20 minutes until I know you're uncomfortable. And then I wait for someone to try to open the door, and I'm standing there and I say, no, please don't come out yet, I'll come and get you. I wait until you get agitated. Do you know why I do that? Because that's what it feels like to be a foster child. To be a foster child is to be taken from what you know and to be put where you don't know anything. Everything is different. You're in a different part of town. The party store you go to isn't the same. The gas stations are different. All the people are different. You may be with people that don't look like you, that don't talk like you. They don't know you. The houses smell weird. The food's funny. And then they expect you to get up in the morning and do your chores. Why am I cleaning your house, lady? I don't know you. You know, where's my mom? Oh, you can't talk to her. Why not? Because the system said so. You know what I mean? It's tough. So one of the proudest things that we've been able to do at Vista Maria is to bridge the gap with the community and to have more homes. And we're in the middle of a case right now that Mrs. Amr was very instrumental in. We have prevented the termination, hopefully, of a mother's rights of 4 children. We've had the case for 3 years. She hasn't had her kids for 3 years. Everything was against her. Termination of her parental rights, meaning that she would lose her children forever. That was a given. It was going to happen. But luckily, Mrs. Amr led the charge, rallied the community. They embraced around her, brought her back from the suburbs back to Dearborn, got her in the neighborhood, and we're building a plan to go into court in about a month and have the judge return all 4 kids home. That's what we do at Vista Maria, because we believe in everything that's been said here. Kids belong in the community. What can you do? You can make a difference. And then I ask you to take it one step further and be the difference. Become a foster parent. Be the example. Just do it once. Take one kid, one time, and make a difference. My parents did that with me. One kid, me, one time, made a difference, maybe. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The message we take today is a dire need to build a facility housing the Muslim children that are entering foster care from our community. Also, the lack of available licensed Muslim foster parents. So we received a lot of information today about foster care. So we were going to open the floor before, we have a few minutes before Salah, we're going to open the floor to the audience. If anybody has any questions, please step up and then we'll bring you the microphone. If anybody has any questions, let us know. Question there, sister? Yeah? No. Any questions from the audience? Question?
There we go. Okay. First of all, thank you all for speaking today. It was very informative and very touching. My question is, what exactly is the foster care facility going to look like? And how is it going to help children? How is it different than a foster parent in their own home?
Thank you so much for participating. And then your question is about how is the facility is going to help? Is that okay?
Yeah, like what's it going to look like? Is it like in a house like 12 kids? Like what's it
It's
going to
going
look
to
like?
be a home like a regular, it's not going to be like a building where it looks like it's a shelter. What my vision is a child when he's taken from their home, from whatever reason, to go to his or her second home to feel at home. To feel at home, to know that there's a love and nurturing hands that would comfort them. Not only that a child speaks the language that the person who's in that home could relate to. A child can express their feeling and what's going on with them. They will get the help that they needed. And then we will do our best, not only to give the child the resources they need, only as well to the parents, to make sure that they get their children as fast as they can. And then it will take, as we stated earlier, a village to raise a child. To lose a child to the system is losing generations of their families. And this is something that we all can step up and protect that child. It does not take really, it doesn't take much other than a heart who's willing to give the security, the innocence, the protection, the child's voice. So the Amr Foundation would be the voice for the voiceless. Until that establishes, we are looking as well to the community to become licensed themselves. It's not really hard. I went through the process, and then as I said earlier, if I had not had my license, this 6-year-old angel who's running around would have been in a shelter. He won't be smiling, he won't be happy. He will be crying. From whatever got him removed, he will be wished to be back at that stage of what, because he was with people that he know. As Mike stated, to be in a strange home, it's so hard, but it's so rare for the child to be able to get into home from not being bounced from one place to another, as of my children. Not to be told the reason why you were removed from your parents because God loved you, because they were born into a faith that goes to hell. You are in a place where God loves you to go to heaven. The child went placed in a home where they get abused and they be called that this is God had loved you. So all the abuse that they endured, they believe that this is out of God's love. That's where the innocence is taken. And that's what the Amr Foundation's will, by God's will try to prevent. With the help of each one of you, and we will collaborate with Vista Maria and with others, because it's something we all need to do. Thank you so much.
Can I also speak there? To show you how there's such a huge need for this facility that Rehab just spoke of. Today, when these children are taken out of their home, have anybody heard of what they call lobby children? Lobby children are children who are taken out of their home and police picks them up. They have an order to pick these children up. And guess what? They got no place to take them. They sit in the lobby of the police force or the police station or a facility until they can find a place. I had a case where 4 children were removed. They end up being placed in 4 different cities. The oldest one was 16 years old. She was livid. She was so angry with me. I'm supposed to be her attorney. When I went to see her, she asked me, why was I put in a place for bad kids? She had did nothing wrong. She said, I did nothing wrong. Why would they take me out of my home and put her in what's known as a delinquency facility? Okay? Those are for kids who have robbed, who have hurt other people, who are not going to school. Her 8-year-old sister had been sexually assaulted by their stepfather. None of these 4 kids did anything. That weekend, I spent the weekend in D.C. with my adult children. I think I cried that whole weekend. I cried for those 4 children who are snatched out, put in 4 different places, in 4 different cities. And I cried for my own grandbabies. Because when I went to visit them in Ohio, he was probably 2 at the time. You see this baby who's running around having a ball? My grandson looked at me and there was no smile. His face was flat. Like Rehab said, when they're in placement, they're in placement. Sometimes they're in placement with 8 other kids they don't even know. They're not getting the care. When my grandkids were returned to me, they had lice in their heads. Babies. They were only 2, 3 years old. That is not the care you want. We need the community step up. We need more facilities. We need more homes open. Not facilities in the terms of residential facilities, but we need group homes, homes that Rehab has envisioned that would foster that culture, foster that home, until such time as we can get a return home for these children. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, sister. Are there any other questions from the audience in the back?
Good evening. I only had one question, and it was, what are the requirements to becoming a certified foster parent or licensed?
It's actually on the Amer website. It's amerfostercare.org. And Mike is probably the professional that could,
I
the
gotcha.
expert that can give you those answers right now.
All you got to do is say you want to do it. It's that easy. Seriously. It takes a little bit of time. I mean, not everybody gets a license, that quickly. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. It's a little bit of work, there's a lot of paperwork, because you don't want just anybody to step up and say, I want to be a foster parent, give me a kid. All right, so we do our checks. And the state makes us, it's all mandated, you know what I mean? So sometimes the system is a good thing because it protects the kids. So it takes, I think the fastest I've ever seen someone licensed, December here is a licensing specialist, 2 weeks, yes, I mean, that's true, that's unusual. Usually it's about 2 to 4 months. Yeah, it's a lot.
That didn't happen in my case. Once I got to Michigan with my grandkids, I'm sorry.
Well, but you didn't get licensed, did you?
They wanted me to be licensed.
Yeah, but they placed them with you as a
Relative placement, but they still wanted me licensed. And they gave me a hard time. And they gave me a hard time to the point where the worker told me, I know you're an attorney, but I'm not going to call you Attorney Good. Like, I don't care what you call me. Just get this thing done. And then she threatened to take my kids from me. Then we had a fight. So you always have to deal with these personalities, but don't let them bully you. You know that you can do this. And perhaps if I had known Vista Maria could license me, I would have went another route. Sure. Okay, thank you.
To really, by me have gone and my husband through that licensing, what would it take is for you, for a person who wants to be a licensed, a big, huge heart. That heart, it really gets you to move mountains, and not even a paperwork would come in your way. Your intention is to save a child. Our God, religiously stated, to save one person is saving humanity. So to do that, think and focus on the mission of saving the innocence of that child. You would call me, I would set you up with an orientation. You have your husband and any child who's 18 years and over, they will have to go through that program. orientation, CPR class. Your caseworker will get you up for background check, Pride 1 and Pride 2 classes. Caseworker will come to check your home. Your home is, if it needs like any kind of minor security issues, you will get those done. And then proof
Just to
of,
clarify, Haji, you don't need to be married to be a foster child.
yeah, you don't. I mean, if you're married and your husband need to do that process. Some of the community, they like one parent. The mom wants to be, but the dad can't, but doesn't happen. You have to be both, they have to go through the orientation. Unless you're single, and then I think it would be easier to get through the process. Yeah, and it's really a rewarding thing to do. And believe me, you can do it. You have the heart. You can do
Thankfully, my husband is open to that too, so.
it. That's awesome. God bless you.
Great.
That's great. Thank you for that question. I think we have time for one more question, one last question. If anybody has any questions with the brothers? Okay, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, how are you guys? All right.
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you for asking. So I was going to ask if you guys can educate me personally and us in general. It sounds like there's no oversight in the decisions that are made by the Organization of Child Protective Services. And you would think that for something that important, there would be something in place like that where there would be oversight. So is there, and should there be, and is there laws that should be put in place?
That's an excellent question. Foster care and adoption in the state of Michigan is heavily regulated. You have a judicial system, meaning the courts, that have the law behind it that they must protect. So you have that side of it. And then you have the state government system, of which CPS is part of. You have that written, they're governed by rules which are interpreted by under the law. So you have two distinct features of it that are there to safeguard the rights of the children and the rights of the parents. So you have the law, and then you have the workers with their system as well. So there's a lot of checks and balances on it. The problem is that a lot of times the bureaucracy bogs it down, right? There's always a way out because you always have an attorney. Every foster child has their own attorney, and they are the most important person in the courtroom. You can't do anything outside of the court. And so there are safeguards and protections, but you have to have people who are willing to fight. You need advocates, you need lawyers, and you need people within the system.
Thank you. I would also add, it's a human system. There are checks and balances, but people have to step up. When you come before the court, that's when it's visible. And sometimes what's the problem are the attorneys sometimes are working with the government instead of doing their job, which is to act independent and not depend on the money that you're paid for by the court, and advocate for the child. And that is supposed to be the system of oversight, but it breaks down. But that's why when a community member steps in the courtroom, that community member holds everyone accountable. And the judge sitting on the bench knows that, yeah, the voters are looking at me and make sure I'm doing my job. And that Child Protective Service attorney, I've been on both sides, that they know it's good to have someone checking that social worker and checking the court and the system. And it has to be the community coming more to the courtrooms, attending the hearings as they can. And what they do, advocate.
I know there was in the news about CPS. Did you read about the big expo that came out about CPS in the news? Anybody hear about that? There, Kim Russell, one of the newscasters, contacted me about the story. They did get some sound bites from another attorney, but I did see it on Facebook, and it was supposed to be on the news. And the whole issue is the CPS is not doing its job. And that they're saying that they are not reacting fast enough or quickly enough to get these kids into safe settings. So I didn't know if you had seen that article and that's what you were asking about, but I agree. There are oversights, there's public outrage, there's public outcry, and our children are sitting in the middle of all of this. So we have to be diligent, not only as attorneys and advocates, we have to be diligent as a community to make sure our children are not getting lost in the system.
So if you're asking yourself now, what's my role and what should I do? Well, if you cannot become a foster parent, you can go on the website and donate. If you don't have money to donate, you can volunteer. Volunteer your time or spread the word. If you go on the amerfostercare.org website, there is a contact information for volunteers. Go on there, put in any information about yourself, if you'd like to volunteer with time, your effort. Right now, we're trying to mobilize the community to shed light on this issue in order to help these kids that are getting lost in the foster care system. So this is the action item, and right now we expect everyone who kindly showed up today for this event, and everyone on the panel, thank you so much for attending today and sharing this great information with us. And inshallah, we'll have a lot of good feedback from the community. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum fi amanillah. Thank you for attending.